Folks, we have a terrific session lined up for you next with Mr. Steve Young. Steve is a managing partner and co-founder of HGGC, a private equity firm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Prior to his inception at HGGC, Mr. Young was a co-founder and managing director of Sorensen Capital, a private equity fund which focused on mid-market leveraged buyouts. All of that said, most of you probably recall Steve best from his professional football career that spanned more than 15 years in the NFL, primarily with the San Francisco 49ers, where he won numerous awards, including the MVP of Super Bowl 29, Sports Illustrated and Sporting News Player of the Year from 92 through 94, and the NFL's Most Valuable Player for 92 and 94. In 2005, Steve was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the first left-handed quarterback to be so honored. Mr. Young is also the highest-rated quarterback in NFL history and has the distinction of being the only signal caller in league annals to win 4 consecutive NFL passing titles. He founded and chairs the Forever Young Foundation, which is actively involved in children's charities worldwide. And is currently the broadcast host, as well as the former international spokesperson for the Children's Miracle Network, which has raised over $1 billion worldwide to benefit children's hospitals. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Young.
You know, all this predictive and data analysis, I'm trying to wonder, you know, if I met with someone yesterday who has a business about DNA, they're doing predictive DNA. In other words, if I give you your blood, he can tell me whether I'm going to be a great football player or not. He really believes that he can go to the 49ers and tell them, I can tell you if I get this guy's blood in college, I'll tell you whether he's going to be great or not. It's kind of scary a little bit, isn't it? It's like, do I really want to, would you give your blood? Would you? Would you say, hey, look, I want to know? Or would you say, look, I don't want to know? It's interesting stuff. I mean, so, Dave, I got to tell you, you know, I'm an early investor in this company. He was telling me, I'm going to build a business around predictive behavior, data analytics and predictive behavior in sales. And I was like, well, that's what I do, you know, in football. That's kind of how I did it all these years. You know, you had how to get people motivated and get them across the line, even though they're not overly invested like I am, and how to get people in teams to move forward, and you know, and we use a lot of data. I think back to what drove our success for the 49ers in the 80s and 90s. It was kind of generations ahead in the data that we had. For me, I spent an inordinate amount of time memorizing the data. They would come in the beginning of the week and they would lay out defenses and what they played week to week, down to down, series to series, and give me all kinds of data. Most guys, of course, gloss over, like, let's just go play. But me, I'm a little bit of Rain Man in me, and I'd start to memorize it all. And what I would do is I would memorize all of the predictive behaviors that defenses, because if you know, I don't know if you know this, but when you're 8 years old, if you play Pop Warner nationwide, Pop Warner is the little league for football around the country, and you know, it's everywhere in the United States and Virgin Islands and Guam and anyone the influence of America. And when you're 8 years old, they line you up in a line. They ask you a simple question: what coast is the Atlantic Ocean on? And if you say East Coast, you play offense, right? And if you say West Coast, you play defense, right? So that they get it over with. They just got to finish it, get it done. Like, you know, why mess around dealing with all the inaccuracies? And let's be data driven right out of the gate. And so whenever I would get all this information about the defenses that I was going to play, it was really predictive, because they didn't overthink anything. You know, in fact, if you studied it, pretty soon you say, oh my gosh, they do the same thing every time. Well, not really, but if you kind of tracked the data and you tracked their behavior, you got to see that if I watched the film and then matched it with the data, I could say that I play the Dallas Cowboys and Darren Woodson's a safety. When Darren Woodson's to the right and he's downhill a little bit but won't look at me, he's blitzing. So I come up the line of scrimmage and I look at Darren Woodson. He's like, he won't look at me. I'm like, look at me, right? He's not looking at me, and he's blitzing. So I was like, change the play, because I now knew, here comes the blitz. And so I would change the play and go ahead for it. And later, after we played a while, Darren would come and go, how did you know? Like every time we're going to blitz, you audible. How did you know? And I was like, because you would look at me. He's like, really? Like he didn't even know. He didn't even know that he was like, when you're going to do something but you don't want to be seen, like if I don't look, I'm not really here, right? So he'd look away and be like, I'm not here. I'm not going to blitz. I'm not going to blitz. Because that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like human behavior is repetitive in so many ways. And so I used it. And now, who's built from that platform of my 90s, career in football and what we did as the 49ers? It was Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning took all this, he watched those of us that were playing in the 90s and what we had done and the data and he just wanted more. He's like, can you give me everything? And then now I want to take the coach and I want him to go away. I don't need him anymore. I just want the receivers and me with my data, and now I can work with them, and now we can, on the fly, in the moment, on the field, when it really matters, I can take all that predictive analysis, and you and I now are on the same page because we've talked about it. It's not just me knowing that Darren Woodson's not looking. It's now me and you. And now that he sees that Darren Woodson's not looking, you can't stop us. And he's taken that to the next level and be able to accomplish incredible things. And I'm actually a little jealous of what Peyton's done because it's like, why didn't I think of that? Right? That's the next step. Of course, Dave would think of that. He'd figure out what the next thing is because that's why the business is doing so well. And so it's fun for me to see the success of inside sales. Not only am I kind of an early adopter, but I feel like I really understand from a human behavior standpoint why it really works. Because football is the greatest human, laboratory for human behavior. I'd say short of the armed forces, but you think about a field of play, boundaries, a clock, a score, rules, strict rules, officials. The truth's gonna come out, and the truth is, so many times predicted about. Is very predictive in my mind. In fact, a lot of times I watch football today, so much is a commodity except for maybe 8 or 10 plays that are outliers that really make the difference. I'd rather take some of the tracking materials you have and lay them right on top of my analysis for the Monday night games that I do for ESPN now. There's got to be a tracking tool that I don't even have to watch. Inside sales just give me a quick report at the end of the game. It's like, yeah, I got this one. I know exactly what happened. I don't need to worry about it, and then I don't have to watch it, which would be really super great. I could just fall asleep for the 3 hours, because the truth is that human behavior, a lot of it is repetitive. A lot of it, we're in our comfort zones, and when you're in comfort zones, you repeat the same things over and over. And I remember it was Bill Walsh, my coach, in the late 80s when I joined the 49ers, the famous Bill Walsh, who was really ahead of his time. In coaching, it's changing the game spectacularly in some ways, and so needed because how they coached football, how we played football, how we thought about training for football was all so archaic. Back when I first broke into the league, I was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we'd come in at halftime, and half the team would light up a cigarette and smoke. Like, what are we doing, coach? Like we're behind, right? Like, I can tell you don't need inside sales to know that we're in trouble. That's not too tough. But with the 49ers, Bill was always about integration, about how to get people out of their comfort zones, to break the bonds of what would be predictive. And I loved that because he would sit us down the first time we'd come to training camp in the summertime, and he'd say, look, I'm going to integrate this team. You guys will be integrated. And what does your mind go to integration? You think racially, right? You just think, okay, well, there's a lot of races in our team. We're going to get integrated. And he goes, no, I'm talking about way more than that. I'm talking about all the things that keep people apart. All the cultural, behavioral things that just naturally keep people apart. Not by anyone's intent, not by anyone wanting to just not integrate, but just we do what we're comfortable with. Quarterbacks hang out with quarterbacks. Defensive backs hang out with defensive backs. Guys from the city hang out with the city. Guys from the country hang out with the country. Guys that went to USC or UCLA hang out. It's like those are the guys you know. So then you eat with them at lunch. You go on the bus with them. You go in the training room. You go to the hotels, to the planes. It's like pretty soon you've got these little groups of people traveling in a big group. And in those groups, in those little smaller groups, you can go around the whole season with 50 guys and literally not know who you're playing with. You know the name, and you know, hey, hi, and maybe you know the name because when he turns around and you see it on the back of his jersey, oh, it's Williams, and then so you see him say, hey, you don't know his first name, Williams, because you see the back of the jersey, you get that part. So he wanted to say, look, well, that's not going to get it done. What will get it done is that I'm going to get you guys in the locker room, in the lunchroom, when the quarterbacks are all around the table eating lunch. He would come in and say, you guys scatter, you're out. And so we'd go around and go sit down with someone else. And it was a little uncomfortable at first, right? Because you're like, hey, and then you're like, William, what was your first name? Oh, it was Troy. Oh, yeah. Where did you go to school? Yeah, well, what are you, blah, 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 blah. Pretty soon, you've got now somebody else that you're integrated with, right? Or in the process of integration. And so you do that enough, you've cross-fertilized with so many guys, now everybody is integrated at some level. Maybe not deeply, but at least be able to look them in the eye, know where they're from, and know a little about them, and know that you're now connected. Because every weekend, you're now going to have to go into battle. You're going to have to go put the pads on, and it is an absolute physical battle. But so much of it is beyond the physicality. There's all of the softer skills, all the softer things that really, I think, that predict the outcome, more than just the true physical force. And so when we get into games, you get down by 4 late in the game, 3rd and 7 in Texas Stadium, 80,000 people screaming, it's 32 degrees and kind of drizzling, and you're soaking wet, but yet it's supposed to be snowing, but it's raining, and you're cold as you've ever been in your whole life because it's windy, and there's this moment. And now you're in the huddle, everybody's kind of looking for the bus, right? How do I get out of here? Because this is a disaster. But now, no more moment do we need everybody. No more moment do I need everyone's absolute, not only attention, but everything you have. Everything you physically, emotionally, spiritually have right now, I need it focused here. And how can I get that more than anything? Do I get it because we're being paid? Oh, here's $50 more. Okay? No. That's not going to get it done. What about if I just have a stick and I hit you? It might work once, but it's not going to work twice, right? What's really going to work? You and me. We're in this. I know you. We've been through. We're battlers. We're in the foxhole together now. We've done this a number of times. This is what we do. And now all of a sudden you get that energy, that excitement, that flourish of relationship, and that's kind of how it gets done. And so breaking down barriers, integrating, is really, to me, what the predictive analytics kind of allows you to start to do in a scientific way. I'm talking about a lot of art, but most of life is a combination of science and art. So much of quarterbacking is science, all of this memorization, all this the truth about what people do and study and memorization and defenses and blitzes and motion and formation and all the stuff that goes with it. It's all the science. And then there's art. It's like when you actually have to go do it, you have to be able to be an artist. And some of the greatest artists are the greatest scientists. And so that's why I think that Dave founded his business on the fundamental principle that if I give you all the science, that'll help you do the art. And that's what sales is. Sales is one-to-one, mano-mano, people-to-people, trying to figure out how to get them over the line, how to get them, don't fumble it, don't, throw an interception. It's all the metaphors that I hear all the time in my business now. People just say never played football in their life. Oh, we fumbled that one. Oh, really? You fumbled it? Tell me about that. How did that feel when you fumbled it? Well, no, we didn't really. Well, what if? Well, can I? Because I fumbled it. Like I actually fumbled it. We actually. That's why football is wonderful for telling you about a little bit about human behavior, because we actually did fumble it. I actually threw the interception. I actually dropped back to pass. My whole team is dedicated 100% to making sure that I'm protected, right? I'm the quarterback. I'm dropping back, and the whole team, everyone, even the sidelines, emotionally, is like, please protect him. Please make sure that he's okay, because what we need him to do is do something great with the ball, right? We want to find Jerry Rice and find that great receiver and then let him have it, but make sure he's protected. So everyone does their job. I'm protected, and I go to throw the ball, and I throw it to the other team. I mean, you got to know when it happens, everyone on the field, it's like on my team, actually feels like they've been abandoned. Like they actually look back. A lot of times the interception will come, the other team now has the football, everything's gone to heck, and so there's this human reaction that they have to look back at me. Like, we're giving you all we got. Why? What? Because they want to know. They want to, like, my gosh. And because I'm human, right? I'm back here and it's like, oh no. So they're looking at me like, why? And of course I'm not trying to, I didn't do it on purpose, right? That's the first thing I say. I didn't do it on purpose, I promise. Because of course you didn't. You'd be insane if you actually dropped back to pass and threw it to the other team to screw up your life, right? That's the definition of insanity. Who would do that? Nobody. But you want to tell people that just in case they're wondering. Because you think maybe it's possible that you would do it on purpose. Like, look, I didn't do it on purpose. And then they're like, well, then why? Well, and then I would start to explain it. Because the fact is there were all kinds of mitigating circumstances that led to this horrible event. Intervening circumstances that, the truth. Like, I'm going to tell them the truth. Because the truth is the truth. These are the things that happened that led to this event. You know what? I didn't make my quota. These are the things that happened. Because they did happen. I'm not making it up. You know? The receiver went down, he turned right, he's supposed to turn left. It's the truth. Right? The offensive tackle, he's supposed to block the guy, he came through and hit me right when I was throwing, so I was off balance. It's the truth. Well, the sun was right in my eye. I couldn't see. I mean, you look straight at the sun and you tell me you can see. Can't see. That's a fact. It's not, I didn't make that up. Or the ball, look at the ball, it's soaking wet with mud all over it. You grab it, feel it. You throw it, try it, throw it right now, see how it feels. Can't throw it, can you? See? I told you, it's impossible. You want to know what happened? Feel the ball. Because that's the truth. And I would tell them the truth because there's 80,000 people now. You know, when you throw an interception, it's 80,000 people just boo. You know, it's like you hear it raining down. But they're not saying boo. What happens is when 80,000 people go, where's Joe Montana? Where? When 80,000 people say the same thing, it comes out as a cacophony of boo. Like it's an upswell. You didn't know that. But so then we'd walk to the sidelines. Everyone would be like, well, he did explain it. He told us what was happening. You know, and then the coach would say to one of the players, hey, what happened out there? You know, that was a disaster. And then he'd say, well, Steve's not Joe. You know, that's the problem. You know? You guys, I'm surprised you're even old enough to know what I'm talking about. But that's what we're going. And then I would be like, hey, wait a second. I just told you what really happened. Okay, forget about that, all the other stuff. But what the fact is that I now realize that I was not handling it right. I'd been 50 interceptions into my career, and I was like, this is not working. I'm not incenting people to go do great things. They're not accomplishing anything. They're just finding ways to go over there and tell the coach that I'm horrible. Like, this is not working. And so the 51st interception, I figured I was going to go completely different, change the whole tack. And so because it's coming. It's not like I'm never going to throw another interception, right? Because like, well, the next time it does happen, I'm going to be ready. So the next time I threw it, it happened. They looked back at me, why? And I usually, of course, I would say, well, I didn't explain. All I did was say simply, hey, look, the ball was in my hands, and now it's in their hands. It's my fault. I screwed it up. But I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go to the sidelines, we're going to drink of water, we'll come back on the field, and we'll go down and win the game. What do you say? I mean, they're like, yeah, let's do that. And we go to the sidelines, and the coach would say, hey, what happened out there? And the strangest thing happened. The guy would say, well, I turned the wrong way. I was supposed to turn left and I turned right. I was like, well, that's weird. Lineman would say, well, my guy came by and hit Steve right when he was throwing. It was weird. Like all of a sudden, by me, the guy that's got the ball in his hand, the guy that's in charge, in the key moment, when everybody's wondering what happened, said, I screwed it up. Because I did. Fundamentally, I screwed it up. Now, it could be that it was a perfect pass and this big defensive guy that thinks that the Atlantic Ocean's on the West Coast goes like this and hits my perfect pass, and tips it up and I mean, it's hard to say it's your fault when that happens, You want to go to the sideline, excuse me, tell the whole 80,000 people, excuse me, that was not my fault. The big dumb defensive lineman hit the ball with his helmet and then caught it. Didn't even know what it was when he caught it. He doesn't even know he's playing football. Because it's just, you have these stupid things happen. But the truth is, when I started to infuse accountability, when I infused it at the key moments, at the key places, immediately, it's as if I opened up the whole, just like air coming out of a balloon, just a flush of accountability just came through the system. Everybody all of a sudden felt, oh my gosh, he's accountable. I guess I got to be too. And then they joined in. And pretty soon you have 50 people accountable for what's happening, that they're responsible for success or failure, and that they're going to be all in because they know that they're going to be held accountable because the person above them is accountable. You're going to have a tough time getting beat. It really makes a difference. And I've witnessed it. I witnessed it in the greatest laboratory for human behavior short of the armed forces, because the truth is the truth. And I can tell you that by being accountable, we got great follow-up. And so 6 times in my career, as I promised him, I'd come back on the field and go win the game. 6 times. The very next pass. Touchdown? No. Interception. 2 in a row. You have a major screw up? Now, this is metaphorical, right? Because you can't throw 2 interceptions in a row because you didn't play. But metaphorically, have you ever screwed up royally twice in a row? It's hard to do, like royally, right? I mean, it's like you can have small mess ups, but 2 in a row. And so what do? When they turn back, you say, hey, look, you just said that that you were going to go down and win the game, and now you've done it again. And I said the same thing. Hey, look, I screwed it up. The ball was in my hands. It's now in their hands. And I'll tell you what. We'll go to the sidelines, get a drink of water. We'll come back on. I promise you, guaranteed, we will not do it 3 times in a row. We'll go win the game. And the truth is, you're wondering. Are you wondering? You're kind of wondering. Right? You're like, he's in the Hall of Fame. Is it possible that he could do that 3 times in a row? I never did it 3 times in a row. So we don't know where accountability finally breaks down. We have not pressure tested it beyond the 2 interception distance, but I can tell you within 2 major screw-ups in a row, it works because people still buy in. And so the truth is, when we were great as the 49ers, we were integrated, we knew each other, we had elements of care or love or at least respect for each other, and a lot of other teams had no idea who was on their team, who were their teammates, and we were forced to break down our barriers and break down our connections, our cultural walls, and pretty soon we were integrated. And then also, when we were great, in the 80s and 90s, we went to the playoffs, I want to say every year for 18 years, and we won 5 Super Bowls and lost, I want to say 7 championship games, possibility of 12 Super Bowls in 20 years. It's incredible if you look back on that time. And why were we so good? Because the other thing that we had from top to bottom, from owner to coach to quarterback to everyone in the building, was accountability. Our equipment man, Ted Walsh, used to say that if I don't get the jerseys just right and everything kind of put out just right and everyone fitted just right, we're not going to win. Literally, everyone in the building felt like if I don't do my job, we're done. We're not going to make it. You get all your sales force out there feeling those two things. Woohoo! And so that's what data will. I think that's what the science can give the head start to. Some of this other stuff you might have to. Some of the softer things you might have to do some work on. But I can tell you that sales is. I mean, if I think about the metaphors for, if the positions, if I match business to football, and you said to yourself, well, the quarterback's the CEO, we'll just say that, all right, and the coach is the chairman, and the referees are the legal, and defensive line is finance. You know where I'm going, though. Who are who's sales? It's the receiver in the end zone dancing. Woo, yeah, number one, baby. It's all about me, right? That's what it is. You think about it, every salesman I've ever seen is like, I'm not playing, lineman. I'm out, and I'm, my hands in the air, number one. So, and so I can tell you a couple things about receivers, just to see if this matches. Just see if my little game fits. Okay. So every time I come back to the huddle, there's two receivers and a tight end. So we'll count 3 receivers in the huddle, right? And in the huddle in football, it's 11 guys, and you get you put your hands on your knees, and you kind of bend in like this, so your heads are together, and you kind of get in a circle, and you huddle. And so when you're huddling in football, the rule is that only one guy can talk in the huddle, and that's the quarterback, CEO. That's it. It's the rule. But of course, every time they come back from a pass play, and you get in the huddle, there's this little chirping by 3 guys like, I was open. Where's the ball? I was open. Throw me the ball. Right? And then you as a quarterback, you're like, shut up. There's only one guy that can talk in the huddle. Right? I'm sick of hearing from sales. All right? Then the film would come out. And the next day, we had film where you'd see from up above, at the top of the stadium, you'd see everything. And then in a quiet room with nothing, just stark reality, right? As a quarterback, it was brutal. Because then you saw, you thought you played the truth, but you didn't see half of it. the guy in the 18th row saw it because he's up above yelling, you stink, Young. Because he saw it all. I can only see a couple things, And so the truth is, then the receivers and I were sitting in the room, and he goes, told you I was open, Sales, Can't stand it. Well, I'm 6 feet. I know you thought maybe when I'm walking to the airport, anyone that kind of knows football, they might say, "Oh, yes, Steve Young." And a lot of times, let's say 50% of the time, they'll say, "I thought you'd be bigger." And I don't know how to take that. It strikes a chord though, because the truth is, I was shorter than a lot of the guys. Peyton Manning is 6'8". His neck is this long. Tom Brady's 6'6". Dan Marino 6'6". John Elway 6'5". Jim Kelly 6'5". Name anybody that played or was great and Hall of Famer. They're all 6'5", 6'6", because they can see over, right? They have visibility. I'm 6. My football card says 6'2", because that's what I wrote down when I was a rookie. And I really believed I was 6'2" until it was proven scientifically. Dave brought out the analytics and basically proved that I was 6 foot 3/4. Who's 6 foot 3/4? You don't even say that. I am 6'1". All right? I'm taller than Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. That's what you need to know. All right? But what does that mean? It means I can't see. A lot of times I'd miss the receiver because I couldn't see. And the coach would say, well, why didn't you throw it to the open receiver? And I'd say, well, I couldn't see him. And he would say to me, well, you better start seeing him. And I was like, oh, thanks for the upper management response. Right? But I know I have to see him. And so what I started to do was to throw it anyway. Because I knew that if I didn't throw it, I would lose my job. And so I started to I kind of knew where he was, the receiver, Jerry Rice. I knew where he was going. I liken that to Dave's analytics. I liken it to, give me some science. I have some data. And then there's a part of it's like, I'm going to close my eyes because I believe I know where it's headed. And I started to throw it. And I got pretty good at it. And some of my favorite memories in my whole life, ever, in all of my career, people say, what's your favorite memory, Steve, of all your career? In many ways, it was throwing the ball blind, because it was that part of me, that art part of me, that was like, oh my gosh, I used everything I had, all the things that to my expertise and all my memorization, my reflexive recall, and all the stuff that I knew was happening with limited visibility, and I kind of let it rip, and it worked. And man, I actually got to be a pretty good thrower of blind footballs. I know that doesn't really work, does it? It was, you know what I'm saying. It was like, and that's some of my favorite memories, was because I used everything I had, and I kind of grew. I was 6'3", because I could, I saw over the line kind of with a periscope of data and faith, and I think it was a big deal. Sometimes you actually do put the flag on Everest. In sports, that's the Super Bowl. In football, in climbing, that's Everest. In inside sales, that's what now, Dave? 18 straight years of 100% growth? No, I know it's not, but it feels like that. Sometimes I'm like, Dave, slow down. You're going too fast. So no, I got to go faster. I'm like, okay, go faster. But the flag on top of Everest for football is Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 29, I was the MVP of the Super Bowl. And when you're MVP of the Super Bowl, the night before, you actually agree to say into the camera, now that you're MVP of the Super Bowl, what are you going to do? You yell into the camera, I'm going to Disneyland. Because the Disney comes and gives you, $500, and then you sign the contract, and you're going to do it. So I did it. I'm like, I'm the Super Bowl MVP. I know, what are you doing? I'm going to Disneyland. And then I went running off into the, all the fun and the glory and all the stuff that was happening. And later in that night, the PR guy says, oh, by the way, it's not a metaphor. You're going to Disneyland. Like, it's in the contract. I'm like, oh, yeah, I went to law school. Didn't read it. And you're going tomorrow. Tomorrow? You mean like today because it's after midnight? Like, yeah. Well, I'm in Miami. How's that possible? I'm going to go to San Francisco. That next night at 7 p.m., I was on a float with me and Mickey Mouse in front of the castle in Anaheim. And fulfilling my $500 commitment to Disney. But it was extra cool. Totally worth it. Because on the float, on the side said Steve Young, Super Bowl MVP, and Golden Red Streamers, the 49ers, and the band was in front. You didn't know there was a band at Disneyland. Boom, boom, boom. They were awesome. Down Main Street we went. It lasted about 4 minutes. And those 4 minutes were some of my favorite minutes of my whole life. I mean, everyone's from California. It's the Super Bowl. We just won. They're yelling, Steve Young, you're the man. Steve Young, you're the greatest. You're the king. You're the great. And for 4 minutes, I lost it. I was yelling back, I am the man. I am the greatest. I'm the king. You're right. Joe Montana, nothing. I'm the man. Ah! For 4 minutes. And then it stopped. The band stopped, turned backstage, and I was like euphoric. I was like, whoa, what's happened? Keep this going. Let's go down Anaheim Street. I don't know. Just keep the parade going. This is the best. Don't stop. So it stopped. It got quiet. 2 little kids sitting on the curb, dressed alike, like moms love to do at Disneyland, so they don't get lost. 6 and 8 years old. 6-year-old comes up. Oh my gosh! He sees the float. Oh my gosh! Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse. And so I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to get run over. And his older brother, before I could get really involved, grabbed him and pulled him back, says, you can't get near him, the big guy won't let you. And I had a little out-of-body experience. I don't know to this day, officially, if I actually yelled at the kid, or I just thought I yelled at him, or wanted to yell at him, that, you know what, kid, of all times in my life, I'm kind of in a euphoric high right now. See the sign, Steve Young, Super Bowl MVP. Of all the moments in my life, I'm not Mickey Mouse's bodyguard. It's right now. And I want you to know it, Like, and I need this to continue. I need this euphoric feeling. But it was great because it just snapped me out of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was great. I got 4 minutes of glory. And then now it's back to work because I got to watch Mickey Mouse and make sure he's okay, right? Because that's how it transitions. And so I just give you that. So Dave, no matter how far you go, no matter how big you get, just know that when you ring the bell or you do the thing or whatever it is, that it lasts 4 minutes. All right? It's awesome 4 minutes. It's great, but then we go back to work. And that's true for quotas, right? It's true for I ring the bell, biggest quarter of my life. Really? Super. Go to Subway. Tomorrow, guess what? There's another quarter. So it's really true. It's really a lot of fun to think about. I hope that that's useful to you. I really a big cheerleader for Dave and the team. I love thinking that I was kind of an insider, and appreciate the chance to come speak to you guys here in Salt Lake City, my place of my birth, just up the street at the University of Utah, which I'm famous for. I'm trying to integrate. I'm trying to integrate. I'm trying to make the integration. Like, we're not enemies, we're friends, right? And so that I was born at the U, but played at BYU, and so we're all in it together. See that? Those of you from out of town, just don't worry about it. There's something to it. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Dave?